Cece, my name's Nichole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and she was having issues, and she's pregnant, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages. And I'm just really, really concerned. And she had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she didn't go to it. And I don't know what to do. I've called him and talked to him, and he said that she went on a play date with her other two daughters. But, like, if she went on a play date, they're both in car seats. Why would she not take her car?
Perfectly understandable. Do you happen to know her address, Nichole?
I'm asking to send it up at her house. It's 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick. And then I said, like, Chris, can you just come home and check to make sure she's okay? Because the shoes she wears every single day are right inside her door. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 3 minutes. Well, that was 45 minutes ago. And I called him and asked him again, can you please come home? And he's like, I'm 45 minutes out.
Okay. Nichole, I'll go ahead and call in. I just need you, if you could please repeat her address to make sure I have it entered correctly.
2825 Saratoga. It's Saratogatr.
Okay.
The thing stands for trail.
Thank you. And can I get a phone number that you're calling me from? Area code first.
970.
Thank you. Okay, Nichole, tell me exactly what happened.
So, we were out of town for work, and we flew in last night. Our flight got delayed, and I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and she was very, like, distraught and out of the sorts because...
What if I told you that the truth behind one of the most disturbing cases in American history was never actually hidden? What if I told you that before a single confession was made, before a single arrest was filed, before investigators even knew what they were looking for, the truth was already there, sitting right in front of everyone, caught on cameras, recorded in voices, betrayed by the tiniest flicker in a man's eyes? What if I told you that a seemingly perfect husband and father, a quiet, gentle man who coaches little girls at soccer, who posted smiling family photos online, who told neighbors he was living the dream, had already destroyed everything he claimed to love, and then looked directly into a television camera and begged the public to help find them? This is the story of Christopher Lee Watts, a story about deception so layered, so calculated, and yet so tragically transparent that it practically unraveled itself. A story solved not just by detectives, but by cameras, phone records, body language, and the extraordinary instincts of one woman who refused to wait and see. Once you hear every detail of this case, you will never forget it, and you will never stop asking the one question it leaves behind. To understand how something this devastating could happen, you first have to understand the world that existed before it did. Because the Watts family from the outside looked exactly like what millions of people spend their whole lives trying to build. Christopher Lee Watts was born on May 16, 1985, in Spring Lake, North Carolina. Quiet, soft-spoken, the kind of person who never seemed to raise his voice, who smiled easily, who never appeared to have a bad day. He met Shanann Razusek, born January 10, 1984, in Aberdeen, North Carolina, through social media around 2010. They married on November 3, 2012, in Mecklenburg County. And then, like so many young couples with big dreams, they drove west to Colorado, where opportunity felt bigger than anything they had known. Shanann was magnetic. She was the kind of person who filled up every room she entered. Passionate, driven, deeply emotional, and fiercely devoted to her family. She had battled lupus, a serious autoimmune condition, for years, and refused to let it define her. When doctors told her pregnancy might be risky, she fought through it twice. Bella Marie Watts was born December 17, 2013. Celeste Catherine Watts, nicknamed Cece, followed on July 17, 2015. And Shanann documented all of it: birthday parties, soccer games, Sunday mornings, dance recitals. On Facebook, where thousands followed her family's life in real time. She also worked from home as a sales representative for a wellness company called Lavelle, promoting a health product line called Thrive. It was more than a job. It was tied to her identity as a provider, as a survivor, as someone who had turned hardship into purpose. Chris worked as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum out of their Colorado operations. He had recently been promoted from field rover to field coordinator, a move that brought him into the office more regularly. A move that would, as we will see, change everything. From the outside, the Watts family appear to have it all. A 5-bedroom home at 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado. 2 beautiful daughters. A 3rd child on the way. A loving marriage. But the picture was not what it seemed. The financial pressure in the Watts household was something most of their followers never saw. In June 2015, just 2 years after buying their home, Chris and Shannon filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Their combined income of roughly $90,000 a year was being consumed by a $3,000 monthly mortgage, $600 in car payments, credit card debt, medical bills, and student loans. Their total liabilities reached nearly $450,000. Shannon threw herself harder into Lavelle. She traveled for business, built her team, grew her following. She was relentless, not just because she enjoyed it, but because she needed it. The income mattered. The community mattered. Shannon's friends from work, women who knew her and traveled with her and texted her constantly, were some of the closest people in her life. Chris, by contrast, had grown distant. He had lost significant weight over the spring and summer of 2018. He had started working out obsessively. He seemed, to those paying attention, like a man in the process of becoming someone else. And then, in early June 2018, Christopher Watts met Nichol Kessinger. Kessinger was a 30-year-old environmental specialist at Anadarko. According to Chris, they first crossed paths when he brought a malfunctioning gas meter to her department. They bumped into each other around the office. She texted him while he was in the field. The texts continued, and then, by his own later account, they went to a different level. Watts told Kessinger he was married. He showed her pictures of his daughters on his phone. She saw a photo of Shannon on his lock screen. But he also told her, and this is where the lies began to build, that his marriage was over, that the divorce was practically finalized, that he was just waiting for the right time to find his own apartment for himself and his girls. None of it was true. At the exact same time Chris was telling Nichol Kessinger his marriage was over, Shannon was 12 weeks pregnant with their 3rd child. They had already chosen a name, Nichole Watts. Shannon had no idea her husband was involved with anyone else. She knew there were problems. She had confided in friends that Chris seemed emotionally absent, different, checked out. She was actively trying to save the marriage. She had reached out to a counselor. She was sending him heartfelt messages, begging him to communicate with her, to fight for their family. The text messages later recovered by investigators would break your heart. She was pouring herself into holding together something that the man on the other end had already decided to abandon. And while Shannon was reaching out, while she was vulnerable and trying, Chris Watts was spending nearly every night of July 2018 at Nichol Kessinger's apartment. His own words in his 2019 prison confession, "It was like I couldn't see anything anymore. I didn't sleep at home the whole month of July, so I didn't have all of those things to remind me that I was a husband and a father." He had not just fallen for someone else. He had mentally and emotionally vacated his family, and yet he had said nothing. He had not filed for divorce. He had not told Shannon about Kessinger. He had continued to live 2 completely separate lives, with the same quiet, easy demeanor that everyone around him had always known. That should have been a warning sign. Not just to the people around him, but to all of us. Because the most dangerous deception wears the face of calm. And then Shannon came home. On the evening of August 12th, 2018, Shannon Watts boarded a plane in Phoenix after attending a business conference with Lavelle. She had been away 5 days. She was 15 weeks pregnant. She was exhausted. And before she left, she had tried one more time to reach her husband, to make a plan, to figure out where they stood. She asked her friend and co-worker, Nichole Atkinson, to drive her home from the airport. They arrived at 2825 Saratoga Trail at approximately 1:48 in the morning on August 13th. A neighbor's security camera captured it. Shannon Watts, visibly pregnant, walked toward her front door. Nichol Atkinson walked her to the door. They said their goodbyes, and Shannon stepped inside. That is the last recorded image of Shannon Watts alive. And the man waiting for her inside the house had already made a decision that no one on earth fully understood. Perhaps not even him. What happened in that house between 1:48 a.m. and 5:27 a.m. would not become clear for months. But by the time that truck pulled away, the Watts family as the world knew it was gone. What the camera caught next changed everything. On the evening of August 12th, 2018, Shannon Watts boarded a plane in Phoenix after attending a business conference with Lavelle. She had been away 5 days. She was 15 weeks pregnant. She was exhausted. And before she left, she had tried one more time to reach her husband, to make a plan, to figure out where they stood. She asked her friend and co-worker, Nichole Atkinson, to drive her home from the airport. They arrived at 2825 Saratoga Trail at approximately 1:48 in the morning on August 13th. A neighbor's security camera captured it. Shannon Watts, visibly pregnant, walked toward her front door. Nichol Atkinson walked her to the door. They said their goodbyes, and Shannon stepped inside. That is the last recorded image of Shannon Watts alive. And the man waiting for her inside the house had already made a decision that no one on earth fully understood. Perhaps not even him. What happened in that house between 1:48 a.m. and 5:27 a.m. would not become clear for months. But by the time that truck pulled away, the Watts family as the world knew it was gone. What the camera caught next changed everything. On the morning of August 13th, 2018, Nichole Atkinson woke up with an uneasy feeling. She and Shannon texted multiple times every day. By mid-morning, Shannon had not responded to a single message. She had missed a scheduled doctor's appointment for the baby. She was not answering calls. This was not like Shannon. Not at all. Shannon was the kind of person who was always reachable, always online, always responding. Her entire professional life was built on communication and visibility. The silence was immediately and deeply wrong. Nichole Atkinson did not hesitate. She drove to the Watts home. When she arrived, Shannon's car was in the garage. Her purse was inside. Her keys were there. Her phone was there. Her engagement ring was there. The family dogs were there. Everything a person would take if they were simply going somewhere had not gone anywhere. Nichole knocked. Chris Watts answered. He seemed calm, collected. When Atkinson told him she was worried and could not reach Shannon, he told her that Shannon had taken the girls to a friend's house that morning, that they had talked, that everything was fine. Nichole Atkinson did not believe him. She later told investigators that something in his effect felt completely wrong. He was too calm, too even. For a man whose pregnant wife had apparently left early in the morning with 2 small children, no car, no keys, and no phone, he was remarkably unbothered. At 1:40 p.m. on August 13th, Nichole Atkinson called 911. What you are about to hear is the actual 911 call placed by Nichole Atkinson on the afternoon of August 13th, 2018. Listen carefully to the urgency in her voice and contrast it with what we know about how Chris Watts sounded that same morning. 2 people, the same situation, 2 completely different emotional responses. That contrast is everything, because it tells you who was genuinely frightened for Shannon Watts and who was not.
Hi, Stacey. My name's Nichole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and she's having issues, and she's pregnant. And I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages, and I'm just really, really concerned. And she had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she didn't go to it, and I don't know what to do. I've called him and talked to him, and he said that she went on a play date with her other 2 daughters, but, like, if she went on a play date, they're both in car seats. Why would she not take her car?
Perfectly understandable. Do you happen to know her address, Nichole?
I'm asking to send up at her house. It's 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, And then I said, like, Chris, can you just come home and check to make sure she's okay? Because the shoes she wears every single day are right inside her door. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 3 minutes. Well, that was 45 minutes ago. And I called him and asked him again, can you please come home? And he's like, I'm 45 minutes out.
Okay. Nichole, I'll go ahead and call in. I just need you, if you could please repeat her address to make sure I have it entered correctly.
2825 Saratoga. It's SARCOGATR.
Okay.
And the thing stands for trail.
Thank you. And can I get a phone number that you're calling me from? Area code first.
970.
Thank you. Okay, Nichole, tell me exactly what happened.
So, we were out of town for work, and we flew in last night. Our flight got delayed, and I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and she was very, like, distraught and out of the sorts because her and her husband are having issues. So, she was concerned because she wasn't, like, eating or drinking and stuff like that. So then this morning, I was like, let me know if you need me to take you to your doctor's appointment because you're not feeling well. And I have called and texted. I've come to her house. She's not answering the door. She's not responding to text messages, phone calls. I've had other friends reach out to her. None of us can get her to respond to us. They have 2 little girls that are 3 and 4. I mean, there's no movement in the house whatsoever. And he states that she didn't take them to daycare and was going to go on a play date, but they're both in car seats and her car is here.
What's her name?
It's in the garage. And I'm like, well, huh?
What's her name?
Shanann Watts. It's SHANANN Watts, WATTS.
Do you know her date of birth or how old she might be?
Oh, if you would have asked me that, I would know it.
That's okay. If you just know her approximate age, that you think that's okay.
He's in her early 30s.
Bear with me here one moment. When was the last time that you heard from her?
When I dropped her off at her house, I watched her, made sure she got in the house. That was at 2 a.m. It was actually 1:55. I literally lived like 5-10 minutes from her.
And her vehicle is it parked in the garage?
Yes. It's a light Lexus. And I probably, because I was concerned, I know I don't want to get a doctor's office in trouble, but I went to the doctor's office because I've been used in as doctors, and I said, I know you can't give me things because of HIPAA, but can you just tell me if she showed up at her appointment this morning? And the lady was like, no, she did not.
Okay. Is that's unusual behavior for her to not show up to her doctor's appointment?
No.
Okay.
No. Pregnancy, like, she was so excited and then got blindsided from her husband that he wanted to separate a week ago.
And her husband's name is Chris?
Yes, his name is Chris Watts.
And he told you that she went on a play date today with
The girls.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're 4-year-old, and she told me last night when we were driving home, she's like, the morning's going to suck because I have to take the girls to daycare tomorrow. And I made the statement, well, you could keep them home with you. And she was like, no, that'd be more exhausting. She was like, I have to get up and take them because I have a doctor's appointment at 9.
Bear with me here one moment. I'm just typing this information in the call here.
And I'm not trying to cause problems more between them. I just want to know she's okay.
Okay. What's her phone number?
Give me 1 second and I'll look it up for you. It is 910-888-8255. 850-3286.
Okay. And Chris told you that he was on his way.
Yes, I just talked to him. Well, I talked to the engineer. One of our other friends did via text because I was going to the doctor's office, and she said he would be here in about 30 minutes, and that was at 1:08. And then I called him and said, Chris, I'm at your house. I'm not trying to cause drama or anything. I just need to know your life, okay? I was like, where are you? And he was like, I'm on I-70. I'm about a half hour to 45 minutes out. And I just said, okay, and then I hung up and called you guys because I'm just worried.
Okay, Nichole, what kind of vehicle are you in right now?
I'm in a white Dodge Dart.
Okay. Alrighty, we do have a call in, Nichole. We'll have an officer come out that way as soon as we can. I would just advise you, to not try to make entry into the house or anything like that until the officers can get there. In the meantime, if you do hear from her, just give us a call back and let us know, okay?
Okay.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
2825 Saratoga Trail of a party who's checking on a friend who's pregnant, who's not answering the door.
That call brought Frederick police officers to the Watts home within minutes. And what followed over the next several hours was one of the most carefully documented, most footage-rich, most psychologically revealing investigations in recent true crime history. When officers arrived at 2825 Saratoga Trail, Christopher Watts met them at the door. Cooperative, polite. He answered questions. He showed them around the house. He said all the right things in approximately the right order. But something was off. One of the first things investigators did was canvass the neighborhood. Almost immediately, neighbor Nathan Trinastick came forward with something critical. His home security camera had captured footage from the early morning hours of August 13th. He offered it to police without hesitation. They pulled it up and watched it together. And Christopher Watts was right there in the room when they did. The footage showed Watts's truck backing up to the garage at approximately 5:27 in the morning. It showed him loading items, things wrapped, things large, into the bed of the truck. And then it showed him driving away. Shanann's car remained in the garage. When investigators asked what he had loaded that morning, he said it was work tools, equipment for the job site. This is where things become deeply revealing. The following bodycam footage was captured during the initial search of the Watts home. Pay attention to how Christopher Watts moves through the house. Watch his body language as officers walk through each room. Notice what he says, how quickly he says it, and the moments where he says nothing at all. Because in an investigation, silence can speak just as loudly as any words.
All right. We'll have you sign a consent form. We just want to see if you left a note or anything inconspicuous, something like that.
All right.
So if you're good with that, we'll have you sign a consent form allowing us to search your house, and we'll wait for our sergeant to get here. But we'll grab that. You don't plan on going anywhere, right?
No, I was just going to walk around the neighborhood just to clear my head.
Okay. Which company do you work for?
Anadarko.
Anadarko. What do you do for them?
Operator.
So you work like 7 days a week?
5 and 2, like Monday through Friday. I'm doing 8 and 6 next month.
Okay. So today is Monday?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let us grab that form, and then we'll wait for our supervisor, and then you can either stay here or you can go walk the neighborhood, whatever you'd like. We look through it. All right. Let's go grab that form. We'll be right back with you, okay?
You have to stay here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. You got one?
I think so. So Chris, it's your house. You can go inside with us if you'd like, or you could stay out here. It doesn't matter to us.
Doesn't matter. I mean, free reign, just whatever you got to do.
Okay.
Like I can chill on the decks on the side of the sun, but
Okay.
cool.
All right. Whatever you'd like. How long have you guys been married?
So we've been together 8 years, married 6 this year.
Okay. And this is very unusual behavior?
Yeah, we can get that dog out of here.
Okay.
She's gonna flip.
On the counter right here.
Okay. So when you guys come home, do you usually use the front door or the garage door? How do you guys?
I usually open the garage door, come in.
Okay.
She uses front or garage, it just kind of depends.
Okay. Is that a ring out there?
Oh, that was
No, the doorbell, is that a ring
yeah,
doorbell?
like when you got a visitor, it does. But I don't think the speaker is on to where you hear it. Like by.
Okay. I guess my question for you is, would it show her leaving with the kids? Did you have any alerts?
If she came out here, yes. Like if.
Did you have any alerts today with that?
Just when her friends were here.
Does it only record when the doorbell rings, or anytime
If
someone?
you're like right here, it should just start. The proximity should hit up.
Okay. And if you had anything on that today?
Just her friends.
And what time was that?
12:10 and about 10 minutes afternoon.
Okay. But nothing between the time when she got here.
No, like she got here at 2. Only thing
This morning?
Yeah, 2 o'clock this morning. So
Okay.
1:48 on here. And the only thing that was weird was that the garage door said it was left open after I left, and it might have been the sensor, but like my phone doesn't show when
For your alarm?
Yeah, it doesn't show if it shuts.
And who's your alarm through?
Vivint.
Okay.
But the Nikki, her friend that came here about 12:10, she said the garage door was shut when she got here.
Okay.
That was the only thing that was weird.
All right. Were you going to hang out there, or you want to come in here?
I'll throw her.
Okay. Where's the purse at?
On the counter.
I'm still recording, so.
Yep. This.
Whose phone is that?
I believe that is his. Bomb overtook hers. That's from vomiting.
Is that a diary, or what is that?
It's for work, I believe. I was thinking it was possibly a diary, but it's talking about like motivation stuff.
How did you say the kids were?
Forest.
This is very neat for having 2 little kids.
Body language experts who later analyzed the footage noted a number of behavioral tells. Chris Watts smiled at inappropriate moments, what researchers call duping delight, a brief involuntary expression that can surface when someone believes they're successfully deceiving another person. He avoided direct eye contact on specific questions while maintaining it on others. He overexplained. He used distancing language when referring to his family. Not my daughters, but the kids. Not my wife, but Shanann. Small things. Easy to miss in the moment. Devastating in retrospect. When an officer asked whether he thought his wife might have harmed their children, Watts responded by saying he hoped not. A statement so chillingly detached that investigators later described it as one of the earliest indicators that something far darker was at play. While officers were inside the Watts home with Chris, Nichole Atkinson was outside speaking with a separate officer. What she said in that conversation is remarkable, because while everyone around her was still treating this as a missing persons case, Nichole Atkinson was already operating from a place of deep instinctive certainty. Her words, her urgency, her specifics contrast everything about her demeanor with how Christopher Watts was carrying himself just steps away. This is what genuine fear for a friend looks like.
How you been?
Hi.
Here, Nichole?
Yes.
Okay, so what's going on?
So my friend, we were out of town for a business trip this weekend.
Right.
And I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well. And she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls. Her husband and her supposedly are separating, but she didn't know this. She thought they were just having issues. I called him, and I was like, have you talked or heard from Shanann since you left for work this morning? Because I can't get a hold of her. I called, I texted. Her car's in the garage. Her shoes she wears every single day are right in the front door.
She only has one vehicle?
No, they only have the one vehicle in his work truck.
Okay. Shanann, are you home? Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything out of place. I'm not hearing kids. I'm not hearing anything.
Scott, how you doing?
How's it going?
So this is the only vehicle she would have?
Only one that,
She would drive? Okay.
What's interesting is the garage door opens, and instead of yelling out for Shanann, he stops and opens up their car and starts looking through the car.
This is a stalling tactic to kind of gather his thoughts up a little bit.
He then walks in the house and is never heard calling their names, as if he knows they're not home. He goes in the house, he's in there for about a minute by himself, nobody goes in with him.
Can we go in the house?
I mean, that's up to him. It's his house. Because
And that's when he comes around and politely lets in the police officer, Nichole Atkinson, and her son.
mind if I come in, Chris? Okay.
They go upstairs, there's no sign of the girls there. They go in the basement, there's no sign of Shanann or the girls.
Her phone's here? Her phone's here.
Does she work?
Yeah, she works from home.
Oh, from home?
She works, this is her lifeline.
This could be the ticket to all the information, like she left the phone behind. But here's the other thing is that he didn't think that it was odd that the phone was left there.
You know her passcode?
I don't know her passcode.
It used to be 2385, and now it's 6 digits.
It's the baby's due date.
I don't believe Chris had planned to have the phone discovered. I think he planned to come back later and make some changes and do what he had to do to make it look as if Shanann was wandering around with her phone and doing other things.
He seems to be anxious. You can see this rocking movement in his body language.
But you told me that she went on a play date with the girls and then...
That's what she told me.
But instead of frantically calling around, asking for help, finding his wife, or if anyone's seen her, he's texting people.
He's trying to take attention off of himself, transferring his anxiety onto that phone. Nichole is like a hound dog. She knows something's up. She knows something's off. And she's looking over at Chris going, what the heck is wrong with you?
What time do you leave today?
What time to leave there?
Come there here.
Usually between 5:30 and 6.
Was Shanann here then?
Yes. Yeah, we go outside.
At one point, the police officer is asking questions about where they might have been, and Chris conveniently walks straight into the bedroom and comes straight out, and on his finger is Shanann's wedding ring.
and he's pointing it out almost like he's pointing a gun. You know, here it is. I found the ring. This is the missing evidence.
I still to this day believe that was her wedding ring that he took out of the car.
What's that?
Nothing on there. You just have my camera.
Is this on continually
Yep.
recording?
I get cars driving from this street, and this is him at 517.
It shows Chris very clearly walking out of the house by himself, backing his truck up into the driveway, and then loading something into the back of his truck.
What Chris Watts does is very purposeful. He goes into the garage, he walks out, he's got a gas can. He goes to put it on one side of the truck, and then he thinks twice, goes, well, I can't really put it there. But you can see him kind of moving, like apparently there's not room for it there. That wasn't going to fit. Let's go around to the other side. Oh, okay, now it'll fit, obviously, between the three dead bodies.
Maybe park out there on the side. I just want to get everything in. Be easier, so lugging everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in.
Suddenly, this guy who had few words has a lot to say. He has an explanation for everything.
Then Chris started to fall apart a bit.
Chris Watts can barely watch it, right? So what happens when you arrest somebody? Get down on the ground. Put your hands on your head. So he puts his hands on his head, even though he wasn't told. But that was a surrendering moment.
That's almost as if Chris was verbally saying, oh my gosh, I was not expecting this.
And you see him pacing and moving, nervous and anxious. Chris Watts' body language is betraying him.
So right now, police don't have probable cause to be able to arrest him because it still isn't clear where Shanann, Bella, and Cece went. They're never seen leaving the house.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Hopefully something comes up here. I've never seen him. If he loads his stuff, he normally just walks back and forth because I get him on camera. But the fact that he was in here and explaining to it over and over and over, well, he doesn't look worried. He looks like he's trying to cover his tracks.
Nichole told officers exactly what she knew. The unanswered messages, the missed doctor's appointment, Shanann's car, phone, ring, wallet, all left behind. She told them this was not normal, that Shanann would never go anywhere without her phone, that the story of her simply leaving to go somewhere was completely impossible. She was right about all of it. And in a case where the truth was sitting right on the surface, it was Nichole Atkinson who made sure no one looked away from it. There is something deeply worth examining in the way that two women named Nichole, spelled differently, living entirely different lives, connected only through their relationship to Christopher Watts, responded to the exact same moment in time. Nichole Atkinson knew Shanann, loved her, had driven her home from the airport just hours before. When Shanann went silent, Nichole Atkinson moved. She made calls. She showed up. She drove to that house. She called 911. She stood outside and told every officer who would listen exactly what she knew and why it was wrong. She was not operating from panic. She was operating from knowledge, the intimate understanding of another person that only comes from real friendship. Nichol Kessinger had a very different response. She knew by that afternoon that Chris Watts' family had been reported missing. She knew because it was on the news. She knew because she and Chris were in contact that same day. He FaceTimed her that evening from his bedroom, and she noticed the sheets were missing from the bed. Strange. She also noticed that Watts, whose family was allegedly missing, seemed to be going through a normal day without any sense of urgency or distress. She began questioning him. He gave vague, shifting answers. At one point, he suggested Shanann had grabbed an EpiPen on her way out, something Kessinger found unconvincing because EpiPens are expensive and not something someone grabs impulsively. She noticed he had not gone into work. She thought that was odd too. And yet, This is where the behavioral contrast becomes striking. Kessinger did not call 911. She did not go to police that day. According to her own statements, she grew more suspicious over the following day, texting Watts that if he had done anything bad, he was going to ruin both of their lives. She told him she did not want to speak to him again until his family was found. It was only after investigators had already begun focusing on Watts that Kessinger contacted the Weld County Sheriff's Office. And when she did, the information she provided about their relationship, about his behavior, about the lies he had told her, was described by Weld County District Attorney Michael Rourke in one word: bombshell. 2 women. One moment. One moved immediately, driven entirely by love and instinct. The other moved more carefully, weighted by her own entanglement in what had happened. The contrast is not an accusation. It is a study in human behavior under pressure. And it tells us something important about how people process the unthinkable, especially when they are implicated in its shadow. While investigators were walking through the Watts home, while Nichol Atkinson was standing outside, describing everything she knew, while the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was activating an endangered missing alert, Christopher Watts did something no one in that moment could have anticipated. His phone rang. What you're about to see in this bodycam footage is one of those moments that is almost impossible to process in real time. Police were actively searching Christopher Watts' home. Officers were present. Investigators were asking questions. And in the middle of all of it, his phone rang. The person calling him was Nichol Kessinger. Think about what it would take for a person to take that call. In that moment, with those officers right there, and then watch how he responds.
There's a driveway from the townhomes that backs right up to our fence.
Now, would you think that's a female friend or a male friend?
Honestly, I'm not going to put anything by it right now.
All right. Well, we appreciate you letting us go through your house.
No problem. I'm
definitely not in there.
No. Hey, hold on one second. I'll call you back. Bye-bye.
Was it in the car? So she came out the door then?
Yeah. First that thing was yellow. What's your name again?
I'm Sergeant Baker.
Sergeant Baker.
Good to meet you.
So she doesn't have any family or anyone around here?
Neither of us do. They're all back in North Carolina. We moved here back in 2012. Came out here to visit some friends during Thanksgiving, fell in love with the place, moved out here a few months later.
Does she have any friends around here?
Just for friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got friends in Frederick, Erie, Aurora, that part of Erie, Broomfield, Parker.
Have you tried to contact any of them?
Oh yeah, we've exhausted every option. The last thing I'm going to do is hospitals. Hotels. There's so many, but...
And no one's heard from her today? Have you checked your bank accounts?
That's another thing I was going to do, because I don't have access through here.
Let's go check those and see if she pulled any cash out, or if there's any strange charges or anything.
Okay.
Can you log?
I can't log in because she does all the finances.
Okay.
So I know her password. I just don't have her use already. I'm not sure what she would have used that way. Sorry, my phone's just blowing up there.
No, you're fine. Who do you guys bank through?
USAA and Chase.
Can you call them and see if there's been any activity? Any withdrawals or anything? And then the suitcases that she came home this morning with, which ones were those? Was it
The black one that's sitting right there.
Not the one in the bedroom?
That was from the last trip, when we just got back a few days ago from North Carolina. She went to Arizona like 2 days later. That was when we just got put back down in the basement.
You guys don't have any stockpiles of cash or anything in the house that she would have had? If she needed cash, she needed to go to the bank to get it?
there is, I would not know about it. I mean, if there was, I didn't know.
You know how much cash he usually carries with him?
It's usually not, maybe like 100.
Your turn signal's on.
It's been on. I may have to turn in a hurry.
The call was brief. Watts kept his composure on the surface. But investigators watching the footage later noted the shift in his energy the moment that phone rang. The almost imperceptible tightening. The careful neutrality in his voice. The way his eyes moved, not to the phone, but to the officer nearest to him. He was calculating. In real time, while surrounded by police, while his family was missing, while investigators looked for evidence in his home, he was calculating. And that capacity for compartmentalization is one of the most chilling aspects of this case. Because it was not a one-time thing. It was a pattern, and it had been there all along. Let us slow down and walk through August 13th, 2018, minute by minute. Because when you lay what Chris Watts said against what the cameras captured, the contradictions are not subtle. They are glaring. At 1:48 a.m., the neighbor's security footage shows Sean Ann arriving home. She went upstairs, got into bed. According to Chris's later account, the two had a conversation about their marriage. He said he told her he wanted to separate. Sean Ann reportedly told him that if he was leaving, he would never see the children again. By his own 2019 prison confession, that conversation lasted less than 30 minutes. At 5:27 a.m., the same camera captured Christopher Watts backing his truck to the garage. He loaded the bed with wrapped, bundled items. He drove away. That is a window of roughly 3.5 hours. When investigators asked about that morning, Watts said he woke up around 4 or 5 a.m., had the conversation with Sean Ann, and left for work. He said she and the girls were still home when he left, that he assumed she had taken the kids to a friend's house later. But here is what the security footage actually showed. No one left that house between 1:48 a.m. and 5:27 a.m. except Christopher Watts. No Sean Ann, no Bella, no Celeste. No friend arrived to pick them up. The family car never moved. The only person who left was Chris Watts, driving a truck loaded with something. And Shanann's car was in the garage. Her phone was in the house. Her medication was in the house. Her ring was in the house. Her wallet was in the house. A woman who had allegedly gotten up, woken two toddlers, and left of her own free will, had left behind every single thing she would need. Any one of those details would be unusual. Together, they formed a picture that no reasonable explanation could account for. At 1:48 p.m., almost exactly 12 hours after Sean Ann walked through her front door for the last time, Nichol Atkinson called 911. By that afternoon, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had been notified. An endangered missing alert was issued. The FBI joined the search, and Christopher Watts agreed to speak with local media. What Chris Watts did next was something investigators who have spent decades in law enforcement still describe as remarkable. He gave a television interview. Standing outside his home, in front of Denver 7, a local ABC affiliate, he looked directly into the camera. He spoke about his missing wife and daughters with measured emotion. He appealed for public help. He said, Sean Ann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. If somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. This house is not complete without anybody here. It was the kind of statement designed to read as desperate and loving. It hit the right emotional notes. It used the right words. But investigators watching it saw something else. Agent Tammy Lee of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation later said that watching that interview made her want to get Watts into an interrogation room immediately. It was not just what he said. It was how he said it, the cadence, the effect, the smile that surfaced at a moment when no smile was appropriate, the flatness in his eyes when he was supposedly describing the terror of his family being missing. She also noticed this. When speaking about his family, Chris Watts repeatedly used the past tense. He talked about them not as people who were missing and could come back, but as people who were gone, as if somewhere in the part of his mind that he could not fully control, he already knew what the rest of the world was still desperately hoping was not true. He was brought into an interrogation room that same day. He maintained his innocence for hours. He was given a polygraph test. He failed. What Chris Watts did next was something investigators who have spent decades in law enforcement still describe as remarkable. He gave a television interview. Standing outside his home, in front of Denver 7, a local ABC affiliate, he looked directly into the camera. He spoke about his missing wife and daughters with measured emotion. He appealed for public help. He said, "Shauna and Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. If somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. This house is not complete without anybody here." It was the kind of statement designed to read as desperate and loving. It hit the right emotional notes. It used the right words. But investigators watching it saw something else. Agent Tammy Lee of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation later said that watching that interview made her want to get Watts into an interrogation room immediately. It was not just what he said. It was how he said it, the cadence, the effect, the smile that surfaced at a moment when no smile was appropriate, the flatness in his eyes when he was supposedly describing the terror of his family being missing. She also noticed this. When speaking about his family, Chris Watts repeatedly used the past tense. He talked about them not as people who were missing and could come back, but as people who were gone, as if somewhere in the part of his mind that he could not fully control, he already knew what the rest of the world was still desperately hoping was not true. He was brought into an interrogation room that same day. He maintained his innocence for hours. He was given a polygraph test. He failed. At the same time Chris Watts was being interviewed by investigators, Nichol Kessinger was sitting down with law enforcement as well. The footage of her interview is deeply revealing, not just for what she says, but for how she says it. Pay close attention to her word choices, the pauses, the hedging, and watch her describe finding out that Shauna was pregnant, because the way she processes that information, right there on camera, speaks volumes about how completely she says she was deceived.
We introduced ourselves in the lobbies and earlier, so we're just going to do that again real quick. My name is Kevin Kovac. I'm with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and we're assisting the Frederick Police Department with this case involving Chris Watts. And this is Tim Martinez, also an agent at CBI. Sir, if you just introduce yourself.
Dwayne Kessinger. I'm Nicole's father.
Dwayne, what's your birthday?
November 3rd, 1958.
And home address for you, sir?
8801 West 65th Avenue.
What city?
And that's Arvada, 8004.
And cell phone or home phone or where?
720-982-4547.
Thank you. And Nichole, can you just introduce yourself for the recording?
Nichole Kessinger. Do you need all the other stuff?
Yes, please.
I live at 12255 Claude Court, Unit 612, phone number 720-656-9605.
Claude Court, is that? I think we determined it was North Glen, right?
Yes.
You know your zip code?
80249.
Okay. Can you speak up just a little bit so the recorder? I know you're tired and you're stressed, and we won't be here any longer than we have to be. You've already had a conversation with people before. You came here on your own free will to talk to us. We picked you up at your request and brought you here. You can get up and leave at any time. You don't have to talk to us. If there's a question you don't want to answer, don't answer it. If you don't want to talk anymore, just tell me I want to leave. And I'm kind of in the way of the door, but you're not being interrogated as a criminal suspect. We're here to understand your relationship with Chris and what you know about Chris and his family, and events relating to Chris Watts. And do you know him as Chris or Christopher?
Either one.
Okay. So the phone number that you reached him on, can you tell me what that number was?
I think I deleted that out of my phone too. I just like cut him out of my life. It's a 910 number. You guys have it.
No, we gave it to Mark yesterday.
Yeah, I probably have it, but just in case.
I don't have it.
If I recited it to you, would you know it?
Just the first 3 numbers.
But you know it as a 910 number?
Yes, that's what I do know. I mean, that's what I got.
North Carolina or something.
North Carolina. Okay. So let's just start with like a timeline of your getting to know Chris, how you guys met, where you met, all those things. And let's just run. And I'm not going to ask you specific questions unless I think it's necessary. I'll let you just tell me your story. I think it's a little bit easier that way. So I just want to know how you met him, where you met him, how long you guys were dating, and those kind of things initially.
Okay. I think I met him sometime in June, probably early June. It might have been May. It was just talking at work. It was pretty casual. And he didn't have a wedding ring on his finger. And every time I talked to him, he didn't tell me that he was in a relationship. He didn't even mention his kids right away either. And then one day he told me that he had 2 kids. I was like, that's pretty cool. And started telling me about his kids.
That sounded like a sarcastic comment.
No, I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he's a dad. It was like right around Father's Day too. So whenever that is in June.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm not good with holidays.
And kids, and then it was Father's Day shortly after that. So that's what I do now. And I was like, I thought it was cute. And then he's telling me about him. He's pretty excited about him. And then he mentioned that he did have a significant other. And then he told me that those 2 were in the process of a separation.
Did he mention the children's name or his significant other's name?
I didn't know his significant other's name for a while. And then I think he told me his kids' names pretty quick, but to be honest with you, on an exact date of when that happened, I don't know.
So in May and June, first of all, where do you work?
I work at Anadarko Petroleum Corporation. I'm contracted to Anadarko Petroleum Corporation.
Okay, and you work out of an office setting where?
In Platteville, Colorado.
Okay. And Chris also works out of that location, per se?
Yes. He's in the field, but he comes into the office with his team.
So you work, what is your job responsibility?
I do health, safety, and environment.
Okay, so you work in the office and you take care of health safety for Anadarko is an oil and gas company, right?
Yes.
So you're doing health safety in the office, and Chris works in the field.
Yes.
As a what kind of job does he do?
He's an operator, so I don't know like all of his daily duties, but he's a field operator, so he works with like the oil wells.
So he goes out and does work on those, whatever.
Yes.
That work might be, but he comes into the office frequent.
In the mornings. His team meets in the mornings. They're not all in there every day. Some days some of them are in there, some days other ones are in there, but in the mornings typically from like 6:15 to probably 7, somewhere around there.
And is that where you met Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just take us through kind of a little bit of the early part of how he courted you or you courted him? I don't know which one happened. How you guys got to know each other?
I guess we just started talking. He actually, so part of my job is to manage the gas monitors that we have. So Anadarko requires all of their field personnel to carry like gas monitor sensors for toxic gases, and it's my job to control the inventory and issues, anything like that. And we were having some pretty serious like equipment issues, and we had numerous amounts of people coming in my office one day, and he happened to be one of them. And I'd seen him before, like they meet in the lunchroom, and that's where I go put my lunch in the fridge. So I'd seen him, but I didn't ever like talk to him. So that day we just started talking, and then every time I saw him in the hallway,
Kessinger told investigators she had absolutely no idea Sean-Ann was pregnant. When she read about the disappearance in the news and saw that Sean-Ann was 15 weeks along, her entire understanding of the relationship she had been in collapsed. Because if Watts had hidden a pregnancy, a 15-week pregnancy, one that Sean-Ann was openly sharing with people, one that had a name, then the image of a man simply leaving a marriage had been a fiction from the very beginning. Her words became one of the most quoted lines from this entire case. I thought, if he was able to lie to me and hide something that big, what else was he lying about? The answer, as the rest of the investigation would make clear, was almost everything. On August 15th, 2018, just 2 days after Sean-Ann and the girls were last seen, Christopher Watts was arrested. He had failed the polygraph. He had been confronted with the security footage, and the story he had been telling was no longer holding together. In his initial account, Watts told investigators he had woken to find that Sean-Ann had harmed their daughters. He said he saw her through a baby monitor in the girls' room. He said Bella was already gone. He said he acted in a rage of grief and took Shanann's life. He said he drove to the work site and disposed of the bodies. It was calculated deflection, a man confessing to a killing but framing it as a reaction, as something that happened to him rather than something he had chosen. Investigators did not believe it. They pressed harder, and on August 16th, Watts led investigators to the work site, a remote oil field operated by Anadarko Petroleum near Rogan, in Weld County, Colorado, roughly 40 miles east of the family's home. When investigators found there will stay with anyone who has ever heard this case. Sean-Ann Watts was in a shallow grave near one of the oil storage tanks, buried in the dirt, without a coffin, without a marker, recovered by excavator. Bella and Celeste were not in the ground. They were inside 2 separate crude oil storage tanks on the site. The access hatches on top of those tanks measured 8 inches in diameter, just over 20 centimeters. Their bodies were recovered after the tanks were drained. There are no words adequate to the weight of that. The following bodycam footage was captured in the hours leading up to Chris Watts' formal arrest. By this point, investigators had the security footage, the polygraph results, Nichol Kessinger's statements, and the timeline contradictions. And yet, watch how Watts carries himself here. Watch for the moments where the performance begins to slip. Watch for the cracks. Because this is what a man looks like when he begins to understand that the story he has been telling is no longer working.
We'll be in the area. Okay. So Chris, I might need your help a little bit. Okay. Where is, I'm assuming your wife, Sherry's in bed with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a look in there and then talk to your kids. Does she have any dirty laundry that hasn't been touched by anybody else besides her? Okay. Is any of your laundry in there with it? Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I just think it's a family. It's gonna happen. How about your kids' room?
So their laundry would be in the...
And has any of it been touched by you today?
I'll put it in there.
You put it in there?
Yeah.
How about dirty laundry?
This is the dirty laundry here.
Okay. You usually pick it up off the floor and put it in there?
Yep.
Beds? Have you touched their beds today?
I made them.
You made them. Okay. Do you like pick up the pillow, that kind of stuff, or you just like? Okay. Let me think here.
Let me see. Anything that...
Anything about
nothing I've ever touched at all.
How about actually shoes would be good too? Shoes that maybe you haven't touched since they've worn them? Is there cleaning?
Yeah, they didn't clean, but sometimes the blankies get put in there.
Okay.
And that's the one she usually uses, the butterfly one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you touched it today?
Yesterday when I put it on the bed.
Okay. Shoes?
Shoes are downstairs.
Okay. And probably your wife's shoes too.
Sophie's shoes and Bella's shoes on this side.
Okay. What's the most recent picture you remember her wearing?
Probably outside because they were wet from a pool party.
Okay.
Does that still work?
What day was that?
That was on Saturday.
Okay.
Those are two right there.
Put them up on the chair?
Call, one's going to be from KOA,
I put them
another
up
one
in
is
the
going to
dry.
be CIO request, and it's going to be the Denver
And everything got wet, right? They were in there.
What behavioral analysts have noted about this footage is the architecture of a performance beginning to fail. Up to a certain point, Watts maintained the composure that had defined his behavior throughout. But there are specific moments when a particular question lands, when a particular piece of evidence is referenced, where something shifts. The smile disappears, the eyes change, and for just a fraction of a second, the mask slips. What is underneath is not grief, not fear, not guilt. It is something colder, something that is trying very hard to reassemble itself before the next sentence. These micro-expressions are not something most people are trained to see. But once you know what to look for, they are unmistakable. And they raise a question this case has never fully answered. When did Christopher Watts decide? Was it in the heat of a 2 a.m. argument? Was it planned before she ever walked through that door? No one knows for certain. Not even, apparently, Chris Watts himself. The interrogation of Christopher Watts is one of the most studied pieces of footage in true crime history. Colorado Bureau of Investigation agents sat with him for hours, pressing on every contradiction, every inconsistency, every piece of the story that did not fit. What is remarkable about the footage is not just the content. It is the arc, the way the story evolves, the way the lies accumulate and then, one by one, fold under their own weight. He began by holding to his account. Investigators challenged him. They pointed out the physical evidence. They told him the medical examiner's findings would tell a different story. That the timing, the location, the nature of what had been found, none of it fit. And then, piece by piece, the truth began to emerge. Not all at once. Not even that day. But enough to confirm what investigators already believed. Enough to lead them to the bodies. Enough to build a case that Watts would ultimately have no way to fight. What follows is the interrogation and confession footage of Christopher Watts. This is one of the most important pieces of evidence in this entire case. Not just for what Watts admits to, but for how he admits to it. Watch the language. Watch the deflection. Watch when he cries and when he doesn't. And ask yourself honestly, what does this footage tell you about the person sitting in that chair?
I brought Graham in here because we want to talk to you about the results, okay?
Okay.
So, it was completely clear that you were not on during the testing, and I think you already know that. You did not pass the polygraph test. Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise. Chris, I never stopped. I'll stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
There's a reason you feel sick to your stomach. And when people hold stuff inside, it makes you physically ill. And I can just tell on your face, I could tell from the second you walked in that you were wanting to just come clean and just be done with this. And I appreciate that because you knew sitting down in that chair that you weren't going to pass today. And you knew I was going to find out because I told you that. And then you continued to stay knowing that you could, at the end, say, you know what? I just need to get this off my chest. Like, I just need to tell you what happened. We're not here to play games. We're not here to do any of that with you. We just want to know what happened. So can you start from the beginning and tell us what happened?
Everything that I have told you, I did not lie on this polygraph. I don't know how much I could tell you right now. Like,
It's not even out there right now because you did not pass the polygraph, so I know you were being deceptive, so that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. That's the issue right now. Okay, so let's talk about that. I know you want to tell us. I can see it in your face. Holding this lie in is going to do nothing for you.
I know this. Like, okay. I'm not, like, trying to, like, cover things up, like...
Yeah, but you kind of are, because it's normal. Normal people would do that. Normal people that make a mistake initially are going to go, I don't know what you're talking about, I didn't do anything. That's normal. I would expect that. It's just like if you ask your kid, you know, did you write on the wall? And they go, no. And you're like, you have a marker on your hand. Like, I know you just wrote on the wall. And they're like, oh, okay. That's a natural reaction that someone's going to initially lie about something like that and then eventually tell the truth. So this is your eventually telling the truth time. This is where the rubber meets the road, Chris. Like, don't let this continue any longer, please.
I'm not trying to make anything continue. Like, I want them back home, like...
But you know they're not coming back home. You know that.
I don't know in the back of my head. I hope they come back home.
But you know they're not.
I hope they come back home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know they're not coming back home. Chris, tell me I'm confused. Okay. Here's what I'm confused about. I told you that we've done some work overnight. Yeah. I told you that we booked out a lot of things. Okay, that wasn't a lie. We don't love a lot more than we think we do. Okay. And here's what we're confused. You're this great guy. I'm not just telling you that, okay? I'm telling you that because everyone tells us that. Okay? We can't find anyone to say anything bad about you. Chris is a great guy. He's a good father. He's a good man. We're confused as to why you're not taking care of your beautiful children. I'm not taking care of them right now. Okay, I don't know where they're at. I do not know where they're at. If I could have my babies back home right now, I would. I want them back. I want everybody back. That is the God's honest truth. Figure out why there's two Chris's. Okay. We talked about that last night. Yes. We just can't figure it out. There's a Chris. Okay. If somebody asks me, like, routine, I'll say, that's the truth. So, it is very surprising to me, and it warms my heart that you're the type of dad who can pack a bag in the morning. You know just what to put in there. You know just what to put in there as a backup in case they have an accident. Okay? You know what the clothes to put in there. You know what they have for breakfast. You know what they have for a snack and a dinner and a nighttime snack. You can tell me the book you read to your daughters. Okay? I really love them. And you're not faking that, are you? That's real. Okay? There's a lot of guys that come in here and try to tell you that. And that's what they're lying. Okay? Because they can't answer those questions that you can answer. But you weren't here today lying about something else. So we need to talk about that, okay? That's your daughter. I know. And she's very good. Yeah, I'm not proud of it. I didn't think anything like that could happen. I don't think I would ever do it, but I did. I know. You go. She accused me of it. I denied it. She was horrible for it. Like, she was pregnant, and it was. I don't want to. I didn't hurt her. I cheated on her. I hurt her emotionally. I cheated on her, And I feel absolutely horrible about this, but that's what I've been holding. When I was about again, I was with her. I was in that with her. That 5 weeks I was alone, I was with her most of the time. You're doing a good job. This is the Chris that I knew would come out today. This is the Chris who tells the truth because you're a truth teller.
On November 6th, 2018, Christopher Lee Watts stood in a Colorado courtroom and pleaded guilty to all 9 charges against him. 5 counts of first-degree murder, 3 for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and 2 additional counts because the girls were under 12, triggering a position of trust enhancement under Colorado law. 1 count for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy for Nichole Lee Watts. 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. He accepted the plea deal to avoid the death penalty. But the guilty plea did not answer the deepest questions, because the account Watts had given, that it happened in a rage, that there was no plan, still felt incomplete. And it was. On February 18th, 2019, in a 5-hour follow-up interview at the Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin, where Watts had been transferred for his own safety, he finally told investigators what had actually happened. He described the conversation with Shanann in the early morning hours of August 13th. He said that after he told her he did not love her anymore, she told him he would never see the children again. He described ending her life there, in their bedroom, in the dark. He said she did not fight back. He did not explain why. He said that as he carried Shanann's body down the stairs, wrapped in a bed sheet, 4-year-old Bella walked out of her room. She asked what was wrong with her mother. He told her mommy was sick. He loaded Shanann's body into the back of the truck. He brought both girls, awake now, and put them in the back seat. He drove 40 miles east to the oil field, with his wife's body on the floor of the truck's back seat and his 2 living daughters sitting beside each other in the dark. When they arrived at the site, he pulled Shanann's body from the truck as the girls asked what he was doing to mommy. He used Celeste's blanket to take her life, with Bella watching from the seat beside her. He put Celeste's body into 1 tank. He came back to the truck, and before what came next, Bella, 4 years old, still in her pajamas, in a field in the early morning, looked at him and asked the question that no language has the capacity to absorb. Is the same thing going to happen to me as Cece? Her last words were, "Daddy, no." He said she fought back. He put her in the 2nd tank. He buried Shauna nearby. He drove home. He showered. He ate breakfast. And he waited. There is a silence that belongs here. A silence no narration can fill and no camera can capture. Bella Marie Watts was 4 years old. Celeste Catherine Watts was 3 years old. Nichole Lee Watts never had the chance to breathe outside of his mother's body. And Shanann Watts, who had fought lupus, who had rebuilt after bankruptcy, who had poured her love into her children every single day, who had tried to the very last to save her marriage, was 34 years old. On November 19th, 2018, Christopher Lee Watts appeared in Weld County District Court for sentencing. He kept his head down throughout. He offered no adequate explanation. What he received, 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, an additional 48 years for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy, an additional 36 years for tampering with deceased human bodies. The sentencing judge described it as one of the most inhumane and vicious cases he had ever handled. Shanann's family gave victim impact statements. Her father, Frank Rzusek, who had stood beside prosecutors at the charging announcement and had attended every court appearance, spoke about his daughter the only way a father can who has lost everything. His written words were later read at her funeral at Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Pinehurst, North Carolina. "You were pure love, always caring for everyone. You will always be Daddy's little girl." Chris Watts was never mentioned at that service. And Shanann's parents made a decision that told you everything about who their daughter had been. They asked prosecutors not to seek the death penalty. They wanted no more years of appeals. They wanted it to end. They wanted their daughter and their grandchildren to rest. That was an act of extraordinary humanity in the shadow of its opposite. What you're about to hear is footage from inside the courtroom on the day Christopher Watts was sentenced. Listen carefully to the prosecutor's words, because they're not just about one case. They're about what the law declares the value of 4 lives to be. And they're a reminder that the process of justice, however imperfect, exists because people believe those lives mattered enough to fight for them.
You would like to make on behalf of the prosecution? Yes, please.
Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who were a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how. Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this: the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives, not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her. Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless. The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son, and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar. He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, "I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it." He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations. He buried Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters. Significantly, when his co-workers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughters sank in the oil and water not far away from him. And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media, asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them, and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe, and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning, and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already described to you, is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. Or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies.
After sentencing, Watts was transferred out of Colorado in December 2018 for his own security. He was moved to the Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin, a maximum security prison where he remains today, serving his sentences. The aftermath of this case extended far beyond the courtroom. Nichol Kessinger gave a rare interview to the Denver Post in November 2018. She spoke about being blindsided, about how Watts had told her his marriage was over, that divorce proceedings were finalized, that he was planning a new life for himself and his daughters. She said she never doubted for a moment that he killed his family. She said there was no logical explanation for what he had done. She called him a liar. He lied about everything, she told the paper. She was not charged with any crime. Investigators found no evidence she had knowledge of or involvement in what happened. But the public reaction was fierce. She received threats. She was harassed relentlessly online. Her personal information was shared without consent. In 2020, following the release of the Netflix documentary American Murder, The Family Next Door, which told Shanann's story largely through her own social media posts, messages, and the footage we have discussed today, Kessinger filed for a legal name change in Colorado. She moved out of the state. According to reporting as recent as March 2026, she has built a new life under a different name and effectively disappeared from public view, a decision driven by years of ongoing harassment and personal threats. Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandra Rzisek, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Chris Watts on the day of his sentencing. They have continued to speak about Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico with love that never fades, even as the grief never fully leaves. The house at 2825 Saratoga Trail changed hands and moved on. But the makeshift memorial built outside its front, flowers, stuffed animals, photographs, crosses, drew hundreds of people in the days after the news broke. They came because something in this case touched something deeply human. Because it happened in a house that looked like everyone else's house, on a street that looked like everyone else's street, to a family that looked exactly like everyone else's family. That is the thing that stays with people long after the details fade. It could have been anyone. It looked from the outside exactly like love. But there is one more thing. One more layer to this case that does not get discussed enough. In his February 2019 prison confession, Chris Watts insisted, repeatedly, across hours of questioning, that he had no plan to harm his daughters. That everything at the oil field was improvised in the moment, decisions made under pressure that he had not thought through. And yet, he drove 40 miles to his specific work site, a site he knew well, a site where he had access and familiarity, a site with oil tanks, a site with open ground. He did not stop along the way. He did not call for help. He did not go to a hospital. He did not go to police. He drove directly there with purpose. If there was no plan, how did he know exactly where to go? That question has never been fully answered. And it is the kind of question that changes how you see everything that came before it. The Chris Watts case is one that people return to again and again. Not because the facts are mysterious, but because of what it asks of us as human beings. It asks us to sit with the reality that cruelty and deception do not always announce themselves. They do not always come wearing a mask. Sometimes they come wearing a smile. Sometimes they come with a hug and a caption online that says everything is fine. It asks us to pay attention to the Nichol Atkinsons of the world, the people whose instincts are sharper than the noise around them, who do not talk themselves out of what they know, who make the call even when no one is sure anyone will listen. It asks us to think about what was happening in that house long before August 13th, about the text messages left on read, about the counseling that never happened, about the slow, invisible erosion of a family that looked, from the outside, completely intact. And it asks us to remember four names above all else: Bella Marie Watts, Celeste Catherine Watts, Nichole Watts, and Shanann Rzisek Watts. She was 34 years old. She was funny and loud and passionate and devoted and flawed and real and fully, completely human. She deserved to grow old. She deserved to watch her children grow. She deserved every year of the future that was taken from her. This case does not end with a lesson that fits into a single sentence. It ends with grief, the kind that does not resolve on anyone else's timeline. But it also ends with this: the truth came out. Not because of one dramatic moment of revelation. The truth came out because cameras captured what happened. Because a woman named Nichol Atkinson refused to wait. Because a neighbor kept his security system running. Because investigators paid attention to the small things that did not fit. Because the details accumulated until there was nowhere left for the lies to hide. The truth was never hidden. It was just waiting for someone willing to look directly at it. That is the dark trail. And we're not done following it. If this case moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, made you look at the world a little differently, then you are exactly who this channel exists for. Dark Trail Files is built on one principle: the truth told fully, told accurately, and told in a way that honors the people whose stories we carry forward. Every case we cover, every detail we include, every piece of footage we examine, it is all done in service of one thing: making sure that the people who were lost are not forgotten and that the lessons they leave behind are not wasted. Subscribe to Dark Trail Files. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Turn on your notifications so you never miss what comes next, because the next trail we follow is already waiting. This has been Dark Trail Files. Stay with us.